Welcome back to Morning Express. We're glad you're watching Monday, the 10th of February. The way it is time for that conversation, the stories that have been dominating news headlines. What is the backstory? What is the part of the story perhaps you've not been able to hear or see? I'm joined this morning by Benji Ndolo, Tony Gachoka. Good morning, gentlemen.
Hi there, Sophia. How was your weekend?
My weekend was great. Restful, fun. Farming. How was yours?
Well, everybody was talking about Valentine's, so I was trying to book some surprises for this Friday. I don't know who came up with this Valentine holiday. It's really pressure on men.
So you're pressured?
Yes, absolutely, because you've got to do something, and and that's what I'm thinking. What do I do this Friday? Surprise my wife and make her feel special.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's beautiful. Are you also under pressure for Valentine's?
No pressure for me. I'm a single dude. I'll be in South Sudan doing some work.
Okay.
From Thursday.
But you had a good weekend?
I had a good weekend. Very good weekend.
Okay.
Went to
Single
Shags.
dude. No, you've just met. You're looking for a wife. We can.
Thank God for the rains. The temperatures have gone down. Nairobi was too hot.
That was kind of strange, the rain in February, right? It kind of caught most people off guard.
It wasn't strange, it was just lovely. We hope it continues.
No, strange in that we don't usually see rain in that part of time of the year. But it was good.
And I don't follow football much, but there was so much on Twitter, on social media
I
to
know.
do with Arsenal and Liverpool, and I don't know
Arsenal was hammered.
I didn't know what happened. What happened?
5-1 is what I know happened. Liverpool beat them. It's sad to see in the papers that, a fan was killed because of, the kind of intensity and emotions that come with football. We have huge fans even here in studio. Sometimes they're like, you must make sure that story is mentioned, when it's a certain team. But it's sad that it went to that. But for football fans, I'm not I'm not an Arsenal fan, not Liverpool. So I think it's a good thing for Arsenal.
Which is your team?
I'm Manu.
Oh, with Maina Kageni, there you are.
Yeah, not doing so well this season, but Tuko.
Yes.
Yes, let's get to the important business now, and quite a number of stories. A lot has been happening. Last week, the biggest was that status conference. We got to hear from, the prosecution, from the defense, from the victims' representative as well, and it's still out there. We're waiting to see what the outcome will be as far as way forward with the president's case. But it was an interesting admission by prosecution, which we've known all along, but in open court, about how badly their case, is doing. And the proposal is to still have more time. They maintain it is not for the judges to just terminate the case.
Yes, and Sophia, even as we get into what will be next Thursday, an important day for the president's defense and the prosecutor, what worries me is the outburst by the former prosecutor, Louis Ocampo, because you are here privileged to have information. Much of it the public does not know. In other words, you have got a side of the defense, you have sight of the prosecution's case, and you hold that, what we call privilege, legal privilege, in the courtroom. And the defense is entitled to disclosure. Every time the prosecutor has to say something, the defense has a right to reply and, of course, object if the prosecutor has said something that does not augur well with the defense. So here you've got Ocampo, after the event, outside the courtroom, holding a tell-all interview in the Netherlands, where he's discussing pertinent issues about the guilt or otherwise, the weight of evidence, including things that he says were included or not included in the investigations on an ongoing ICC trial. In my view, Ocampo has committed what you call contempt of court, an abuse of the court process, and in fact, as the Honorable the Attorney General goes this Thursday to The Hague to deal with the issue of non-cooperation on the Kenya government, I think time has come now to raise the question of Ocampo's conduct outside the courtroom about this very sensitive issue before the judges on Thursday.
What are your thoughts, Benji? Do you agree contempt? Because we hear him saying there were those who sought to interfere and have him fix, as has been alleged, but he said that is not his job. He insists and maintains he conducted investigations and had evidence against the two especially.
I'm of the view that obviously that's not an outburst. I very much admire and embrace a society that is open, that is honest, that is frank. Simply the prosecutor spoke his mind, talked about the investigations they did, talked about how they did those investigations, talked about geopolitics a little bit, and different values and standards that are applied or otherwise, by world leaders, world bodies, and their, legal opinions, constitutional and otherwise, on if, for example, you're eligible to run for office, if you are charged with very serious crimes. And his opinion, which I also disagree with, that they would leave that decision to Kenyan judges who, in my opinion, would be, at pains to, move against the establishment, so to speak. So not a problem at all.
Sophia,
I'm not one of those Kenyans that's going to subscribe to the endless propaganda. In fact, I like how he was very candid that, in the investigations, and I've said this before many times in my NGO world, that they didn't find any trail that led to Kibaki. They didn't really find any trail that led to Raila.
But there's still a working list.
Sophia, there are very serious matters here. 6 Kenyans were charged with crimes against humanity. Sophia, I would like you to imagine there can be no other crime worse in the world that an individual can be subjected to, and his family, and in this case, the country and the people of Kenya. His Excellency, the President, the Deputy President, are on trial for crimes against humanity. These are not casual matters that Ocampo can discuss casually at a press conference. These are matters to be canvassed in a court of law, and that is why we have the ICC as a constituted court under the Rome Statute. And these issues were brought about in the State Assembly of State Parties when people were asking about the excessive prosecutor and a prosecutor going beyond the boundaries of his job. And part of the problem Ocampo has always had, he has tried this case in the media, not in the courtroom. As we speak, the people who he sent to The Hague, Henry Kosgei is off, Mudhaura is off, Ali is off. He's now left with 3. Of the 3 he's left with, the current prosecutor is saying she doesn't have sufficient evidence to sustain a case against the president. And what I am simply saying, there is a pattern of complete and total lack of prosecutorial, evidential capacity and quality to have been able to allow this case to reach where it has.
And will that be decided in due course as due process
And
continues?
Sophia, in the public interest, I did send to you my letter to the Attorney General. And I would like Kenyans to know, because I've never released this document, this is a secret communication between myself and the Office of the Attorney General that was done on as far as 3rd August 2012. And it was copied to all the cabinet subcommittee. As you can see, at that time, there was James Orengo, there was Sam Ungeri, Eugene Wamalwa, Ames Kingi, and Otieno Kajwang. And the issues that I raised to the Attorney General, including the disclosures, were certain evidential things that the prosecutor Ocampo did not take. And they would not receive the evidence from people like myself, who was working at the Office of the Prime Minister, for example, and other people who were denied access to the prosecutor. Now you've got a prosecutor saying he didn't have evidence. Yet we have taken this evidence before him. Did he look at it? Did the subcommittee on the ICC, in the Kenyan government, did they raise this issue with the ICC? What I'm simply saying now, and I saw Deputy President William Ruto speak about this, Ocampo, the truth is coming out. A foreign diplomat, who I'm aware he's referring to Kofi Annan. And he's referring to the people that had an agenda in this country to effect regime change. That he was getting pressure not only to take these people to trial, but to stop them from running. In other words, the ICC was going to be used as a political court to have certain candidates cleared to run for office. And this is really a serious attack on the constitutional duty and right of the Kenyan people to elect their leaders.
But if that was the motive, then did it not fail?
My point is, there is nobody in the world who can act extrajudicially. If you act extrajudicially, the Rome Statute should protect the accused as much as it protects the prosecutor. What I'm simply saying, you cannot have this kind of trigger-happy prosecutor doing as he wishes outside the realms of proper judicial conduct. And if he goes outside the boundaries, in fact, there is an existing court order right now at the ICC that the merits of the case, which are before the court, should not be discussed outside the court. And here you've got Ocampo saying the First Lady was guilty, but not too guilty. I think we cleared Raila. And so Uhuru had more against him than Ruto. And he's making statements unsubstantiated. And the defense have no right to reply, have no right to say, hold on, that statement affronts us. And in fact, if I were in the president's defense team at this status conference on Thursday, I would bring out the conduct of the former prosecutor and I would ask the judges to censor censure him for contempt of court and an abuse of the process.
Benji, in as far as now what we're hearing from the Jubilee team talking about, asking for the, for Waki again, and that Waki envelope and the people in that list, the names to be made public, what are your thoughts?
The problem with this whole ICC debate is a lot of hot air, that these guys are blowing. Lots of, unsubstantiated, immaterial, ridiculous propaganda. I don't think the former prosecutor should be gagged. I think that candor and straightforwardness are very necessary ingredients in, the principles and tenets of democracy and good governance, which are principles and tenets that the Commonwealth subscribe to, that international bodies ascribe to and aspire to. I think that no country in the world is perfect. I think, Kenya, like many other countries, is struggling to put together institutions, to put together standards, constitutions, and what have you that actually work for the people, that work very hard to downgrade impunity. The problem with this debate, Sophia, is the minute, Raila's name, as he has alluded to about regime change, as soon as that's what poisoned the debate. As soon as it's seen to promote one candidate against others, I think that's where the debate really, really got poisoned, because truth be told, the fear, the loathing, the loving of Raila Odinga, this big politician in this country, is just real. And so, this is actually how tribal sentiments and what have you were used to whip up, the passions.
Benji, to my question, what Jubilee seeking to have Waki, the Judge Philip Waki, before them, in as far as this is concerned and what is contained in Waki, what are your thoughts?
Who is seeking to have Waki? The
Parliament, National Assembly.
Now one thing Benji would do is bring up the name of Raila Odinga. So I actually brought my life certificate of the ODM. I was a member number 25 of the Orange Democratic Party when it was founded. And I think it's very important for people never to use this tribal tag, because you're saying the truth. And I'm fed up, really, of the NGO world. Every time you bring up an issue on the ICC and the merits and demerits of things that are legal, they want to politicize them by saying that they are tribal. I was a Kikuyu member, number 25 of the Orange Democratic Party. I also want to say this, and this is a letter signed by Raila's Permanent Secretary, Mohamed Isahakia, appointing me Director of Protocol in the Office of the Prime Minister. And I was appointed on 8th January 2009 after acting as Chief of Protocol in the Office of the Prime Minister. So let's first of all forget about making sideline comments, as Benji says. It's very important in this program, Morning Express, that I know even the President watches, for people to really be honest and sincere when they speak about people and credentials. So when I'm criticizing the Prime Minister, it is not personal. I'm criticizing the manner in which Kofi Annan, the Prime Minister, and the international community tried to politicize the post-election violence in Kenya and concocted a case where, instead of investigative quality and evidential value, political considerations were made. Ocampo has admitted to this. At no solicitation of anyone but himself, he has admitted that he was being pressurized in order not only to bring the cases to trial, but to stop politicians from contesting democratic elections. Now, those are very serious allegations, and they touch on the Constitution. Sophia, may I remind you that the ICC is not plucked from the air. It is anchored on the Rome Statute, which is a treaty signed by nations of member states, of which Kenya is a member state. And that must be consistent with our constitution and the rules of natural justice. You cannot have a situation where an accused person has no rights. And even if today I'm accusing you, Sophia, of murder, and I hope you don't intend to kill me, I think you would have the right to at least to defend yourself. And that's what I'm simply saying, that Ocampo had the right to accuse the accused people as he has. But they have a right to a defense, and not on a talk show at the Netherlands, in order to belittle to such a matter involving Kenyans and their president and their deputy president to a talk show affair, when it is a matter being canvassed by some of the top lawyers in the world at The Hague, at the ICC.
Finally, on that topic, Benji, what do you have to say?
I obviously don't have much to say.
Going forward with this particular one, Ruto is confident that his case and that of the president will fall apart. He said that.
There goes another prophet.
Yeah.
We've had several here on this show. There's some in government and everywhere. Look, it's a serious, undertaking. I think that the entire, IC process is unfortunate, as it is, what predicated it.
When you say unfortunate, you don't think we should have been there, Kenya?
I don't think that if this country had a good foundation, a good governance foundation, a good electoral process and what have you, a good political system that Kenyans believed in and respected, that we would be where we are. I don't think we would be in a position where the president himself is defending charges brought against him again before he was president. So I'm saying it's unfortunate whichever way you look at it, and across the board. I mean, these are Kenyans accused. Look at what he did to Ambassador Muthaura. I mean, he was unwell for forever, an old man that has served more than 30, maybe 40 years in public service, and ending your career that way, Sophia. I think the entire thing is regrettable at all levels, and certainly no one would take any joy in it.
Now, Sophia, I want to inform you that there is a decision in the Jubilee Coalition.
In less than a minute.
Yeah, in less than a minute. There will be a full investigation.
Okay.
And the Waki will be summoned to Parliament. This matter, as declared by Ocampo, will not be let to lie. The issue of conspiracy, that Waki was involved in somehow manufacturing an envelope and a list for political considerations, not legal considerations, is a matter that Parliament, which is a watchdog of the Kenyan public with regard to keeping the government of the day in account. Remember, Waki was a commission of inquiry appointed by the president. He wasn't acting as alone. He was acting within the authority and the mandate of the Constitution. And Parliament will be inquiring into whether there was any politics and whether there was any policy to effect a regime change.
I would just like to remind you.
And that envelope of 20, an envelope that I well know about, don't be very surprised if I bring it here next Monday.
I would just like to remind him that
then don't be surprised if I bring it here next month.
I'd just like to remind you that when Jem Kariuki was murdered in 1975, Parliament did discuss the matter, and no less than the Vice President, the floor of Parliament, said that Jem Kariuki was alive and was traveling to Zambia. So we will listen to the debates. We are aware who is controlling Parliament. We're aware who is controlling the executive. We're aware, who is really in charge in Kenya. And so let's not sit here and posit that any debate on this issue will be coming from the cathedral.
The elephant in the room, Sophia, is that Raila Odinga's name is in the envelope. That is the elephant.
Oh, well, I didn't know.
And let me tell you,
we thank Tony for a lot of the information.
Let me also say this. I want to be very careful, and I want to tell you this. This country is being held, and I want to make, Sophia, maybe the most important interview you'll ever do. What happened to the country in the last 20 years? This country had senseless killings that led to the post-election violence, bringing this country to the brink of collapse. Who was accountable? Who was responsible? Is one of the most important decisions we are going to make in our lifetime, particularly at this time of transition in Kenya. Now, it is very important, it is candidly discussed. Were there proper investigations? Was there a political cover-up? Was there an agenda by the West to engineer political or regime change in Kenya? And if there was, then it makes a mockery of what is going on at the ICC. And Africa has stood very loud. Not just Kenya, the whole of the African continent, including up to the state parties. So we must be very careful about what we are saying. We're not talking about the innocence or guilt. We are talking about the politics around the case.
If the suspicion Raila's name is in there, it now explains to me
There's no suspicion, there is knowledge of it.
Well, I had no idea.
Well, you now know.
Thank you very much for the information. It now explains.
Okay.
And Ocampo says in a press conference that I cleared him, and he's in the envelope. I mean,
I don't know who's in the envelope.
Who asked Ocampo to speak just now? Because he's aware that status conference is on Thursday. Why did Ocampo has been quiet all this time? When did he leave his office? Why is he speaking a week before he knows that the charges against the president are going to be dropped at the Hague? You think this is a coincidence? This is an orchestrated game. And I want to tell you this, and we must say it loudly. Ocampo, you finished your job. Why are you speaking? Let Barasuda do her work. And I want to be very clear. They know the Attorney General has been invited to give the Kenyan position on Thursday. Before he even arrives there, Ocampo wishes to speak on behalf of the Honorable the Attorney General. And that is why I have brought the Attorney General's letter. He's seized of the matter. He's aware and will bring forward certain matters that the court will hear on the 13th.
All right, let's move from that. It's definitely a story we're going to be watching and see how it develops in this week and, of course, going forward. But also last week and over the weekend, we saw what happened in Mombasa, the question of radicalization, terrorism, one of that conversation that in modern day Kenya important to have, cannot ignore And the biggest concerns is that this is happening, and yet the various stakeholders, which include the families, the parents, the guardians of this, young people in Mombasa, there's the leadership, there's the religious leaders as well, are standing by, and seemingly not much is being done to mitigate, to come and intervene in a manner that will see us deal comprehensively, because of the kind of reactions and response we see is just knee-jerk. It's just for that particular incident, but the bigger issue that is not being addressed, that is not being discussed, and so we have a form of ticking time bomb. Benji.
Ticking time bomb is the right description, Sophia. Clearly, the issue of Muslim or Islamic radicalization is there. I predicted certainly and accurately that after the aggression into Somalia, that basically this would go up a notch. The way the terror cells operate, Al-Shabaab, for example, Shabaab stands for, the young ones, the small ones. These are splinter groups, spin-offs from the mother of all, which is Al-Qaeda, which stands for the base. And so usually what happens is they have common ideology, they operate very individually, very very sporadically, but once you have a common cause, like the aggression of say Israel or the West against one of their brother countries or what have you, then you have all these small terror cells, Sophia, coalescing together and having now common objectives and working together and what have you, and that becomes very dangerous. I think that we Kenyans have a long way to go to understand the nature of radicalization, the nature of terror cells. One of the mistakes I feel the security agencies are making is, in essence, trying to fight fire with fire, because it's a never-ending, no-win strategy.
Yeah.
If you just go and look at the West Bank and Gaza, the struggle between Israel and Palestine for the last 50 years, certainly through the 80s, peaking in the 90s, and up to today, an eye for an eye, throwing of grenades sporadically, shooting of RPGs and what have you.
If I could
it is absolutely a never-ending.
Yeah.
If I could weigh,
and that's why it's very important to understand. That's why it's very important to understand, for example, that we must never do anything to give the enemy ammunition. They radicalize young girls and young boys to go into a mosque with shoes. In and of itself, you can imagine how they will use that.
I'd like to weigh into this.
Yeah, as you weigh in, Tony, the biggest concern for analysts have argued that the manner in which government, the security agencies are dealing with this is going to entrench those hardline positions that are held by the very same people.
Tact. Sophia, we've got to be very careful as a media. First of all, I condemn all forms of violence and condemn what the youth are doing. But I want you to remember, criminals are criminals. These are acts of criminality. They've not yet reached the proportions that Benji is speaking about. And I want to remind this country, there was a time this country had got a phobia of Mungiki. I mean, everywhere you went, the newspaper headlines, beheaded people without eyes and tongues were all over my area of the geography of Kenya, central Kenya. And the problem with these terror groups is they don't actually fight other people, they kill their own. Mungiki's own death was because it attacked its own people. And in fact, what they were extortionist gangs.
So you're saying there's no need to worry?
I'm not saying that. I am simply saying, if you go to Kisii, you'll find their vigilante groups. There were Baghdad boys in Kisumu and here in Kibera. What I'm simply saying is there is a police action and activity going on in the coast to deal with criminality. I know so many decent Muslim
leaders. So you think this is just about criminality to break a shop?
I'm saying at this point, you've got a criminal gang that wants to gain all this publicity and news to create some kind of religious fanaticism. And I said this started with the Mungiki. They're the first people to actually do it. They used to actually even, what would they say, give you an oath in order for you to become a member. You are dipped in a river, taken blood, and so on. So what I'm simply saying is criminals use religion as an excuse for criminality. If you look at the last 3 incidents in Mombasa, stoning cars, looting shops, passerbys are attacked. This is not religious conviction. They are not attacking government installations that you hear they bombed a police station or a court of law or whatever. They are actually attacking common, ordinary people in so-called religious action. So what I want to say is we must not baptize a religious uprising that doesn't exist other than in the minds of the propagandists who want to make the youth think it's religious. What you have right now in Mombasa, if it's curbed now, is acts of criminality or people who must be arrested and people who must be taken to court.
And how do you say they curb it? How do you suggest?
Michuki came up with a policy against the Mungiki. It was heavily criticized then, but it was heavy government presence and intolerance of Mungiki. And I remember when...
But I've just said that intolerance, we just saw, Darren Sonsarigo was in Mombasa, did a story, talked to some of those young, children, 12, 13, that were there in the mosque. And the kind of reaction that we're seeing from the security agencies has only gone to make them feel,
exactly.
to some of the things you're
Sophia,
hearing them
I
say.
hear you.
So how is that?
I hear you, but
I'll
leave it for Kenyans and you to decide the history of when the police were farmed with Mungiki and what happened at the end of the day.
So force is the way to go,
that you cannot allow people to use a mosque and use it and say it's religious and go away and with anarchy, lawlessness. I mean, they will reach to rape, they are going to reach to murder, they must be strong security presence, and the police must use whatever force is necessary to safeguard and preserve the lives and property of people.
Sophia.
And
so
they must do so.
Force really, Benji, the only way to deal with this situation?
On such a sensitive matter, I want to be very clear. I want to be on record. I have to be on record because, sometimes I'm trying to find the words to say this, Sophia. Sometimes the ignorance around subjects has a very, very, very heavy toll. I'd like Kenyans to go and do a search on Muqtada al-Sadr and what Muqtada al-Sadr was able to do in 2004 and 2005 to the United States Army that was spending $4 billion a week in Iraq by shipping fighters, jihad fighters, into the theater of war and causing a complete bog down of not just the US Army forces, but coalition forces to include Germany, to include Italy, to include England. We're not trying to scare anybody. I'm just saying on ideological struggle where jihad is declared, on ideological struggle where you have an intifada declared, it is very dangerous because what they use is not a conventional warfare, Sophia. It has no rules, it has no morals, it has nothing. What they thrive on is the element of surprise. And so I'll tell you, Sophia, on an ordinary morning, you wake up, there's been a bombing, and almost 300 Kenyans are running around not understanding what's happening.
Really?
We are not. No, we
What's
are not.
happening in Mombasa are acts of criminality. What
I'm talking
jihad?
about...
Why are you talking up a matter
I'm talking...
as to scare Kenyans? There is nothing that has happened in Mombasa that is anywhere near.
Let him finish.
Let me finish so you can respond.
Yeah.
I'm saying we have to look at all the dynamics.
Yes.
We have to understand the capacity and the capability of our forces, of our intelligence. And if we radicalize, if more get radicalized by anything that we do, we've got to ask ourselves the question, can we afford more Westgates and that kind of thing? And the reason for that, the reason for that is, I personally don't think, I think that acts of terror is very well documented and understood in the world.
Mombasa has been people in a mosque coming out and stoning pedestrians and throwing stones at cars. What terror has
they're
taken?
stoning Kafiri, stoning. It's not all
look,
about.
Let us be very clear.
Tony,
no,
it's not about noise making.
I know.
What I'm trying to do here,
Benji,
I'm trying to inform policy.
Benji, you never ever speak to me in that derogatory
I'm not
tone.
talking to you.
Nobody's
I'm addressing Sophia.
Okay,
No, this is an important. This is an
the biggest
important
question.
This is an important matter. These are the kind of things that can bring down an economy.
Look, there's nothing that can be brought down. Sophia, listen. The problem here is we have got too many people talking up a simple criminal issue. Now, I want to be very clear here. And I want
but
to be,
Tony, you cannot be as simplistic as saying it's not a criminal issue.
I can
because I've just told you, and
it's not
perhaps you needed to watch that report to get an understanding of the situation on the ground. While you talk about it just being a simple criminal issue, it's not like after that it's like, oh, the police are here, the security, so we're not going to do this
Sophia,
anymore.
Can I ask you a question?
What it's doing is making them want.
99% of Muslims in Kenya are wonderful citizens of this republic.
And that is
who do
not
nothing.
in question.
And I'm going to give my view whether you like it or you don't.
That is not the question about whether they're good or bad
I am saying that there is no Muslim or radical uprising in Mombasa at the coast.
Can I ask you a question?
There are criminal elements, and I want to be very clear.
Can I ask
you a question? Muslim leadership across the political divide have actually even gone there. There is a fact-finding mission already going on in Mombasa, of which I'm aware of, led by the Muslim leadership itself, working with local credits and leadership from across the political divide, looking into the problem. And I can tell you today, primary results are already out. This is not a religious-driven action. These are criminals trying to use and misuse religion in order to bring and create something that was not there. The history of violence in Mombasa, I gave him his time, started with the Mombasa Republican Council. And towards the last election, there was all these things by NGOs, international, there's going to be a problem in Mombasa, people will not even vote, the IBC mock trials was disrupted by MRC, it was all over the news. Heavy presence of police and security agencies.
You've made your point.
Ensured that elections, elections were held and MRC.
You're closing remarks on that one.
No, I have a question for him.
Yeah?
If this is a simple criminal matter, why is the Al-Shabaab flag that flies in Tikrit and Fallujah and parts of Riyadh and now in Mombasa, why is it being flown in the mosque? If this is a criminal matter.
Let me say this.
Simply because of solidarity.
People in this country worry me. Because when a government is elected, people want to continue politicking throughout. This is a security situation involving criminals. And the police have a duty and obligation to bring security in the streets of Mombasa. So I hailed the leadership of the Muslim and the police who are working together to ensure that the criminal elements are removed.
Benji,
if I was this policy teacher, I'd mark him fail.
Okay.
Wrong.
And that's why nobody will ever elect an NGO in Kenya. Yes, that's my...
Well, if I was a teacher, I'd mark him fail.
Okay, you'd mark him fail. Of course, we'll continue again to watch one of those stories. But today, Benji, you're carrying a constitution. You have a matter in court. What's going on?
As was widely reported in the news, I moved to the court on Friday, myself and my organization, based on the work that we do on advocacy, to seek interpretation on if the governor of the great city county of Nairobi is fit to continue holding office, just given all the developments of different things that have happened. Reading of the Constitution prima facie, on the face of it, and it's in English text, Articles 73, 74, and 75. There are real questions about the suitability at this point of Governor Kidero, who, by the way, I consider a friend. I just feel that this has been a complete mockery of everything, given where things have gone and reached. The governor, obviously, being caught on camera doing what he did, then saying that, the lady had grabbed his private parts, then that he didn't remember, reporting to the police and what have you. If you read the Constitution, which a lot of Kenyans have not done, and which I have incessantly criticized civil society for not doing enough civic education on this Constitution, which was a savior in many ways, because this is the document. This is a document that can actually give us the opportunity to build afresh a new constitutional dispensation.
There's one of the people watching the show. Just a second. I'm allowing you to finish.
Yes.
Benji, Brian Massey says, why do you always bring Tony on this show? He always destroys the motion debate, never lets his colleague finish his point. So let him finish his point. Even the viewers noticing, let him.
And who wrote that? And who wrote that?
I'm not selectively reading. It's here.
And who wrote that?
And somebody else says, look, you're looking fresh today, not like last Monday. That's good.
So are you actually? Even you're looking fresh. You didn't look like last Monday as well.
That viewer should know there's a tactic, especially used by Republicans, called filibustering or obstructionism, where somebody who might not have as many ideas as you do will engage a lot of their energy and time.
You can't allow Benji a platform to try a case in court.
No, this is my show. Let me run this.
Is it your show?
Yes, you're a guest. So let's have this.
Or he doesn't even know whose show it is.
You're saying that you think the governor is not fit to hold office because of the incident with the honorable woman representative?
Not so much the incident, but even the conduct following the incident. I think personally, and we don't want to subjudice, of course, I just think personally that there's been very serious break in judgment, failings in judgment. I think the governor, in my opinion, told a bold lie. I also believe,
it's basis on that you think he's unfit.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I also believe, I believe that that under Article 3.1, all right, that every person has an obligation to respect, uphold, and defend this Constitution. I think that Kenyans need to understand that if you want a better Nairobi, if you want a better country, you must stop sitting back and hiding and waiting for Sophia to do it, or to take a position, or to take a stand. And you, first of all, must uphold, promote, and defend this Constitution.
What are your thoughts,
So it is not even a personal thing. I think there's a real, foreboding, given many things in the last, say, 1 year, constitutionally, that Kenyans are starting to really lose hope in the ideals of this Constitution, in the ideals of top leadership, in the tenets of leadership and integrity, and these have been amplified by the Shebesh Kidero saga, of which has been very well documented in the media, and people are very disillusioned, if you may, deflated
you
even,
made your point.
and not really understanding what's going on.
Tony?
Yeah.
First of all, you said this is your show, and I agree. So I will not come back again. The second thing is, I can tell you that. Second thing, I will say this. I cannot be sitting here for you to allow Benji to misuse the public forum to prosecute a case which is in court.
You're allowed to make
your
comments.
I am making my point, Tony, about what he has said.
Why are you getting emotional?
No, I am not emotional at all. I am saying there is a court case. Now, as I understand it, Benji has said he has filed a court case, and he's canvassing before the court what he thinks are his issues against the governor of Nairobi, and wishes the court to make declarations in that petition.
Okay.
I don't think that this forum has become a court of law in where we canvass the prayers of people who cannot defend themselves. I think, and I said it here, Dr. Evans Kidero has a right to be respected as the governor of the great county of Nairobi. He has a good name, which he has worked very hard to actually build, both as a corporate CEO and as an able governor of this town. He was elected by millions of Kenyans. And anybody can take him to court, and that is their right. But he must be accorded the proper opportunity to defend himself with the same veracity, opportunity, and platform at the court or anywhere else. I think it is an abuse of journalistic freedom for anybody to be allowed to come and rain upon an individual who cannot defend themselves on television. That's my first point.
But how many times have you done that to other people?
The second point, I'm not talking about a court case. I'm talking about a court case. There is a court action where a judge is supposed to be impartial in order to determine what that case will achieve or not achieve. Now I'm coming to the other issue about Shebesh and Kidero. There is a coin side to every coin. This matter involved two parties. One party was Kidero, the other party was Shebesh. If Shebesh has found it that there is no complaint against the governor, the law under the penal code is very clear. You cannot take somebody to court without a complainant. Whether or not you disagree with what they did or they did not, there is a legal procedure, not an emotional procedure, about how you try an accused person. There would have to be people who give a complaint and witnesses who adduce evidence. And therefore, like it or not, for the reasons the court gave them opportunity to make it up or they don't make it up, they decided to make it up, and therefore they have both withdrawn their complaints at the OCS Central and at the OCS Parliament buildings. Now, Sophia, at the end of it, I would want to say that Dr. Kidero, to my mind, any petition that Benji or anyone takes to court will be defeated because it will be defended, and it will be defended by his record, which I think is that he's been a good governor for the city of Nairobi, or county of Nairobi.
I have to respond.
Yeah.
We're not trying this case on national television. This is a public interest matter. This is an elected governor with millions of supporters. It is, by the way, why I had to make at least a, bold statement. Yes, that it's not about that I'm against the party. It's not that I'm a tribe hater of whatever his tribe is, because all manner of things in these kind of things come up. The truth of the matter is, if you even run a poll, Nairobians are extremely disappointed with the lack of progress in this county. I happened to have been in Machakos County just last week when the security vehicles were being flagged off by Governor Alfred Mutua. There's a lot of discussion about how Nairobians would elect, for example, Alfred or whoever, because things are not moving. We have traffic lights that don't work, that cost a lot of money. We have other bright lights that all they do is blind motorists and what have you. These are the real issues, the issues of security and what have you. Personally, why I would like to do something is because I have always been active in the influencing of policy, in advocacy matters, and I think the governor has been way too distracted. This whole discussion, precisely what Tony is alluding to, about the penal code and what have you, how it just opens opportunities and room for exchange of money. I mean, we're all Kenyans, we're all human beings. When you open these kinds of legal gray areas and gambits, all you're trying to do is fuel the culture of corruption in this country. How do you go on clearly on something and say, well, we're going to go and sit down for 2 weeks and see what we can come up with? That's ridiculous. If you assault someone in the Republic of Kenya, you get a P3, you get a complainant, and you move forward.
She forgave him. She said,
how do you forgive someone for something they don't remember? You have
I
to
tell you,
acknowledge that you
you know,
did wrong.
Sophia, as I draw to an end
You're
of
in
this,
court.
as I
When
draw,
that's over,
it's a public
Sophia, this just
that.
repeats. I remember when court lost the petition before the Supreme Court. Willie Mutunga, who was then a hero of everybody in the court movement, became now the villain. That Chief Willie Mutunga has abandoned, I don't know, the reform credentials and whatever, simply because the former Prime Minister did not win the court case. Here already you have Benji Ndolo in court, already deciding for the judge what the judge should say in the petition that he has filed. So what I'm simply saying is that if we believe in the administration of justice and the rule of law, all I'm saying is everybody needs equal opportunity to be able to defend themselves and their good name. KTN, I'm sure, is in the forefront of defending.
By the way, I must say, finally, I must say,
and therefore I was saying, because I didn't interrupt him, I was simply saying that Shebesh, no, I did, because I'm saying you cannot deal with the Kidero issue without dealing with the Shebesh question. She's an adult of able and equal ability who has made a decision to move away from her complaint. It is her decision that has brought into play the fact that Mr. Kidero is not being charged under the penal code, and that must be emphasized to all Kenyans.
Okay.
Sophia, I must say, and I'm sorry.
Very briefly, please.
Yes,
Benji.
I must say, and I'm sorry. It gives me no pleasure to move to court, especially against an individual. I have credible information from good sources that this is actually even dangerous for me, absolutely, and I even have examples. And so I must say that my lawyers, my family, etc. are well advised that if any harm were to come to me, then it would be from this case, and that has to be said on the public record.
Let's talk about the MP salaries, gentlemen. Yes. That is definitely a story we'll be watching to see what will emerge from that as you have already moved to court. So the Speaker, talking about the ruling by the High Court over the salaries and the MPs being able to decide, how much they earn or not, talked about it being misplaced and ignorant of the law. This again bringing the two, in collision, the legislature and the judiciary. This is not the first time we're hearing him over decision saying this is not the way it should have been. But first, as far as the ruling is concerned, do you agree?
Yes, I think it was a good ruling. And look, there is a winner and a loser in every court process.
Yeah.
And I think that the party here, Mutata and his group, had a good petition, and they argued and defended their issues well. And actually, I read the ruling, and I found what the judge was saying is what Parliament cannot do with regard to their own salaries, and give reasons why. And if I was Parliament, I would actually look at that ruling quite well. Instead of going head on with it, I would actually revise the manner in which they approach the issue of remuneration. I support that court ruling. It was a good ruling. Kenya is already paying too much for people in politics, and there's very little to show for it. So not only did they win the legal case, the group that took this to court, but they actually won, in my view, in the court of public opinion, because somebody has to do something about this never-ending appetite to enrich oneself in public office, and that is not the place. And that's one of the reasons I support the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, by actually coming out to say that in his own office there is corruption. And that is a very frightening thing for the President and head of state to actually have to go public to say that something is going wrong in his office with regard to graft. And that must be mirrored, must be reflected, must be applauded by this kind of human rights crusaders like Mutata, who are able to never stop fighting for the public good. On this one, I pat his shoulder and his back. I think it was a good case, and it should.
But you have the Speaker talking about that it was misreading of the law. Benji, very quickly on the same.
Look at the caliber of Speaker Muturi.
Yeah.
On this particular issue, I agree with Tony Gachoka. I also agree and support very strongly the President, Uhuru Kenyatta. This is one of the first issues Uhuru tried to tackle when he came in, and he tackled it unsuccessfully. And what we need in this country is leadership on these matters.
Yeah.
The culture of exploitation, the culture of selfishness, as Tony has alluded to, and I'm glad at least we agree on something, is a big problem. I was one of the activists right from 2009 that led demonstrations around this country in conjunction with ICJ, Kituo cha Sheria, Center for Law and Research International, against members of parliament when Speaker Kenneth Marende was in office. And all they demonstrated was a never-ending appetite, a ridiculous sense of entitlement, and a tone in argument that suggested that no matter what happens, we have got to have this money and got to have it now. I would say that Mr. Rem must be supported. I don't even know how they got to scare her, because she's very strong and all of a sudden she was waffling on the issue. The SRC must set pay. Members of parliament cannot set their own pay. And after all, most members of parliament are lazy anyway. They don't work hard. They don't go to these bills. They don't come up with ideas. They don't do anything. All they want is to make more and more allowances. They make technical appearances in committees to earn a sitting allowance. This must be said. And if we don't say it, who will?
The Law Society of Kenya held their elections 6th of February. Ahmed Nasir lost the representation of the LSK in the JSC. Did that shock you? Tomo Gender now getting...
It didn't shock me personally. Yeah. I predicted that Eric Mutua would win. Eric has shown, strong leadership. For the chair. I'm talking about both. But I didn't predict on Twitter who I thought would win as representative to the JSC. I think that the Grand Mullah has been, the fire in the belly, very decisive, very bold, etc. But he was a tad bit too arrogant. And so what I said is, we're still a very traditional and conservative society. If you're that arrogant, Kenyans feel belittled. It would work fantastically in other countries, but here Kenyans feel like you're looking down on them, etc. So and secondly, personally, I feel his participation in the Supreme Court petition and how in essence he put Raila down, that played against him at least a little bit. But you see, he lost by a very small margin, only 100 and something votes.
Okay, both of them are very competent lawyers. I know Tom well, and congratulations for getting your election. In fact, Tom replaced Ahmed before at the Law Society. When he left chairmanship, Tom was the next chairman. What I want to celebrate more than the individual personalities, Ahmed is a really strong lawyer in Kenya who has come from a marginalized community to become a senior counsel and an admirable inspiration to young people from all over Kenya. So nothing but accolades from me for people who get to the top from very far down. But what I loved most was the peaceful, tranquil elections that were held in such a professional matter. I really applaud the lawyers of Kenya for showing that tribalism doesn't exist except in Benji's mind. That they elected Eric Mutua from more than 3,000 stations around the country.
Tribalism does not exist.
It does not. I'm saying the election at the LSK showed so. And Eric Mutua was elected by all Kenyans. And in fact, he only lost, if I remember correctly, in 2 stations. And none of them were driven by ethnicity. His vice chair is from Nyanza. And again, she got all the votes and became re-elected. And it's a wonderful celebration that elections can happen peacefully, without ethnicity, looking at the quality of the person. And even in the case of Ahmed Abdi Nasir and losing the election, he was gracious to accept defeat. The thin as the margin was, there are no petitions that he's prosecuting before any electoral body. The IBC that people say messed up the Kenyan election, whatever, was trusted by lawyers, delivered on time the LSK mandate and result. And the Law Society chair and the Law Society elections went back to the IBC. And I keep saying this, support these institutions because they mean well for Kenyans. But because Raila was not elected in court, we had 6 months of bashing the IBC, which has now delivered this election for the lawyers. Let us accept and agree when processes are good and right.
But you cannot compare general elections with LSK elections. This is a very small magnitude.
LSK could have LSK could have handled internally. And Sophia, my point may not be agreeable to you, ma'am. But what I'm simply saying, LSK could have had internal elections.
We're just saying the comparison is off.
No, I am saying they opted for the credibility of their election. They invited the IBC to do and conduct that election. And I'm saying that they did a fine job, the men and women who work for IBC, in giving a credible result.
We must bring this to a close, gentlemen. We'll finally allow you to comment on the headline today in the Star: Anti-Raila Rebellion intensifies. So talks of disgruntled members in the ODM wanting to jump camp and form another party, United Democratic Movement. Talk of that Raila has not delivered in his backyard. There's too much politicking, not much ahead of 2017. Do you think that will bear any fruit, or it's just some, unhappy people making a little bit of noise and will not?
I'm not very conversant with Nyanza politics, but I think that if you asked Raila, he would tell you that kelele za chura zitafanya ng'ombe asikunywe maji. So I don't think he would be very worried about this kind of thing. I think he has vanquished many enemies. I think he's always had speed-offs. I think you will see analysts predict or see the hidden hand of Jubilee, trying to weaken him and what have you. I don't know. I think it's quite difficult in ODM, but they need to sort it out, and I think they will.
Sophia, look, I think every Kenyan saw the first time pictures of Raila Odinga being heckled in Kisumu when he tried to protect the Sikh community shrine or idol that was erected in the center of Kisumu. Right. And the Prime Minister tried to quell the crowd and they shouted him down. And there is no doubt that Raila is beginning to lose grip of control in Luo Nyanza. And I want to give you credible example. Kenneth Matiba had the same fate in central Kenya. He controlled iron grip, what they used to call from Murang'a, Chania River up to Kiambu, and ran the election against Moi Kibaki and Moi then, and actually eventually lost his clout. We have many politicians in the country who are, of course, powerful up to a point. Moi was the undisputable leader of the Kalenjin, the so-called Kamatusa, which now is under the grip and control of William Ruto. Uhuru Kenyatta has inherited the so-called Mount Kenya constituency. So what's happening in Nyanza right now is beginning to believe who is going to bequeath Raila in terms of, who is going to inherit Raila's constituency beyond a certain political date. So they are not just internal elections. They are about positioning yourself so that should the Prime Minister quit politics, who will be at the helm of his political constituency.
Guess what I found, Sophia?
That is for real. Yeah.
As we finish, guess what I found?
Yes.
I have to show our viewers.
Okay.
Today I want to finish on a good note because I am so tickled and so irritated at the same time. So see what I found, Sophia. 1,000 shilling note of former President Moi. So why I think this is important is because there's been always very quiet speculation on how come they cycled out all these currencies, etc. And do you know what the answer is? Does anyone really know what the answer is? It's right there. Read it.
Share with us, Benji. Summer.
It says President of the Republic of Kenya, which actually he's not. So that's why. And this is important for educational and discussion purposes because guys are like, oh, this is so tribal, blah, blah, blah. And why did they return another Kikuyu president and what have you? So that's the answer. And I was very, very, very tickled to...
Seeing that Tony did announce it his last show, you want to share with us a parting shot? It's been great.
No, we'd like for him not to leave.
No, let him
just
share
come
with
back.
us.
Even though you drive me up the wall, Tony, but come back.
Well, let me say this, that it's also been fun. It's been good to sit and share our views with Kenyans. I hope that there will be other platforms where people can actually be able to express themselves on behalf of well, you'll be hearing of me soon.
Of course.
But let me just say this, that it has been a pleasure obviously coming here early in the morning, fresh and bright and early, and being able to get a different perspective on the news and to be able to share what little knowledge we have with the people that listen to us every Monday morning.
Okay, it's going to be a great...
It's a warm goodbye, but I've enjoyed the time I've been here.
Thank you. Thank you for being part of the show. It has been great to have you as well.
Sophia, I've done morning shows for more than 2 years here and elsewhere. It's tough. It's tough, the questions, the what have you. So I just pray that I'll have the strength to continue, and I enjoy it. I mean, we thank Kenyans for listening. We meet them every... I was in Thika over the weekend. I was in Kangundo yesterday. People stop you. They say, oh, on such and such day, you said this. You said that. I don't agree. I agree. I love it. Give me your... Blah, blah, blah. So I will continue, and I just hope to continue to give very unvarnished, honest, candid, eloquent, articulate positions on issues, the honest truth. The real talk.
Sophia, well, thank you very much for having me all these weeks. And now you will have Benji and somebody